Hey folks, it's Emily from Make Tech Work for You. I'm excited to share a conversation that I had with my best friend, business partner, and tech conspirator, Samantha Shane from The Data Are All Right. And she pointed out this tweet that had a lot of ensuing conversation, and I think we both read it at first with one perspective, and then we came together to talk and share some thoughts and feelings, and gain some new perspectives, and just voice some things about what the intention here is, and potentially some of the positives that can come out of this conversation. So, really hope that you enjoy it, and let us know what you think.
Okay, Emily, best friend.
Yes.
Did you read the tweet?
Significant debater friend. uh, I did read the tweet, but it also, I read the tweet, coming from your prompt of read this, here's this tweet, here's this conversation going on. So I kind of came at it from that perspective a little bit, like, oh, here's something to see, not just like, oh, scrolling down, what's another Salesforce tweet. And I think my first reaction was a little bit in my personal way of like bucking against the grain. Because typically I'd be like, stand on my soapbox and say, there's so much more to being an admin. You need this and that certification, blah, blah, blah. But I did have some different, more like softer reactions to it. So, but before I share, how about you? How did you come across this tweet?
I didn't think much of it when I'm sure I saw it and I was just like, another like warm take. This doesn't impact me. And then I started to see a lot of like rebuttals, and then I started to see this thing that people say on Twitter called subtweeting, where you don't like quote tweet or reshare something, you just talk about it. So I started seeing people writing about that tweet, that capital tweet. And I was like, oh, they must be talking about that thing because now it's controversial. And so I had like a couple of, I feel like this is a situation where I really see two incompatible conclusions. And so I've been practicing my cognitive flexibility of like, what if both of these things are true? One being no barrier to entry, anyone can do it, everyone in, all aboard, it's not hard. And then the other one being like, this is a serious profession, you need training, like you can't just take the reins, and feeling this like kind of like zero sum mentality about it. And actually, like, I think that there's a lot of strengths in both perspectives. And it really, I actually reached out to someone who, saying like, do you think that this is like the logical conclusion or like a logical like end point of having a marketing strategy where it's like anyone can be an admin, we're aiming for like big tent. Also, like people even do this accidentally. Like you don't really need any expertise to do this. I don't think that's what Salesforce admins is like trying to say. I think they're trying to say like, there's room for you, like get on board. But I think, and there's like a big focus on inclusiveness, which I think is great. And so then I think that the next question becomes, cool. So like, what does it really take to do this well?
Yeah. Okay. So let's share this. Let's share the view of this tweet here.
Right? Oh yeah. And I think it also got deleted.
Yeah, I read that too. Probably this guy was like, I'm putting out a really positive message, and then got backlash and was like, what?
Yeah, but it's totally understandable why, given all of the marketing from Salesforce, if anybody can do this and you can even do it on accident. And like, I've been seeing these posts of like 14-year-olds getting Salesforce certs and thousands of likes and stuff. There's this idea of sort of like, not 14-year-olds can be super smart and stuff, but this idea that like it's somehow like, I think conflating accessible and easy might be one of the things that's going on here. So anyway, my good friend David Reed, who is such a mensch, posted sort of like his like kind of like analysis of it and the screenshot, which is useful because as I understand it, Austin deleted the tweet after I think a lot of attention got drawn to it.
Funny, when I pulled this up, I was like, ooh, the next recorded conversation I'm having with Samantha is David Reed's tag. If it's not automated, it's tech debt. I have got a lot of thoughts about that. So on this, let's just say, do you think this was ever true? Is this a change? Was this something that we would have said 10 years ago?
Well, what does it mean to be a Salesforce admin? You know, when I started 5 years ago, a big piece of the training was like, this is how you create users. This is how you add a field. It's like, yeah, you can learn that in a couple of days.
A Salesforce admin, let's just talk technical. You have a system administrator profile, right? Which means you should be able to open up the back end of Salesforce and make most, if not any, all changes available, which is many, many changes now, from very insignificant to very significant on the Salesforce side. But even in organizations where we have had admins in places where we would like them not to be, where we'd like to have more profiles than just system admin, I've typically said, like, you know, you can't really delete everything. So unless you're going through looking for delete buttons and you're getting through pop-up screens that say, are you sure you want to affect your data model this way by deleting? Having a bunch of administrators doesn't always mean that you have people running amok.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you're asking maybe is like a little bit more existential. Like, what does it mean to be a database admin or a systems owner, right? Like the manager of a system, someone that people are turning to you with questions and you're making, you know, changes based on that. And then the secondary question of that is like, what does it mean to be a good version of that, a successful, helpful version of that? And I think that's less defined than your profile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think, you know, now I'm looking at this with kind of new eyes of thinking, you know, I did a 1 week not boot camp, it was just Salesforce University 5 years ago. And I walked out of there knowing all about profiles and roles and not that much about automation. They don't really cover a lot about automation. Those just like what the automation tools are. And if you could totally be a Salesforce admin who, like I said, is adjusting page layouts. If you're not, I think one of the things that makes it hard to be a good Salesforce admin is managing the whole business process or org process and managing integrations and automations and that kind of stuff. But if you're working in an environment where you're using mostly out of the box features, you have leads coming in, you have sales going out, you have some data entry. Okay, like 3 weeks seems like a little short, but 3 intense weeks. It's just, that's a very limited, to me, based on my life experience, that's a very limited scope of what a Salesforce admin can be. And if you're managing a lot more stuff than that, then I think that's sort of where this maybe starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I really like your examination of that first line, because often I tell people my story is I was in theater and music, and then I got like in a situation where I discovered a kind of technology and data that sort of piqued my interest. And then I went on a years-long, very intense learning process on the job, which I now, as a person giving back, I hope try to condense for others, like give them, you know, the tools that I wish I had at the beginning, right? So if I were to say the sentence, I'm pretty sure an American with average maybe I wouldn't say it that way. I'm pretty sure any American could become a Salesforce admin. That's part of my mission, that anyone can do this, particularly people in mission-driven work need to have some level of database knowledge. And I think a person with some level of database knowledge is going to go in to be an okay Salesforce admin. You can learn what buttons to click and where things exist. Although then I would like to say 10 years ago, it was easier. Like Salesforce is in a transition now where like page layouts and field visibility and permissions for what you see you might have to touch 3 very different places in the setup UI of Salesforce to do that. So I think Salesforce is bloated. for sure.
Yeah, and they're taking away workflow rules and process builder. And so now to be a Salesforce admin, you have to learn flow. And guess what? It's taken me 2 years to learn flow. And that's not an exaggeration.
That's if you have, like you said, like you mentioned, if you're doing out of the box, if you're not going to automate things, if you're going to do a lot of manual data creation where a flow might create records and other things instead, which gets back to the automated tech debt question. But yeah, I think that there's levels to this, certainly. Mm-hmm. Now, if we go down.
The question is how many people at the 2 to 3 week pushing buttons Salesforce admin fantasy that we're talking about here, how many of those are there, and can you actually make $79,000 doing that?
Yeah, I think that, again, the question of Salesforce as a particular system versus a 2 to 3 week intensive in data and technology history and theory and database administration and general
principles
knowledge about exactly that. Well, I actually think that will serve to make a better admin than 2 to 3 weeks of Salesforce trailhead. That's it. It would be much better to learn bigger concepts than where to push buttons in Salesforce. And I think that from my experience, the mix of that in Trailhead doesn't fit my mix that I need. I'm not saying that Trailheads only push buttons. There are certainly concepts introduced and lots of principles, but the mix is not right for me. Yeah. So I think that's.
I'm just looking. This is probably like a faux pas because of how these videos usually are made. But I'm looking at your tabs that you have open in your browser, and I see that you have a project management tab, an email calendar, learning a coding language that's not part of Salesforce, a spreadsheet, which is like sacrilegious for Salesforce. It looks like that's a Salesforce org. Yep. Then you have a third-party app for importing data, which you can't really learn through Trailhead. And then, some notes. So, that's a lot of different things to learn and to access and maintain. And I think that that's kind of an interesting, expression of what it really is like to be managing and manipulating data.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
no shade for the tabs, by the way.
Yeah, that's okay. And you know what, though? Thank you for throwing shade, because I am sort of like doing some stuff and then being like, oh, I really want to do that Java class that I'm doing. And I'm just going to leave it open because I want the temptation when I don't need it open.
So neither of us would. So we're moving our way through. This is like a Talmudic text study of this tweet. So neither of us would say average intelligence. I would kind of strike that because
no. But I think the message that the tweeter here was likely saying is that I would rephrase that to say technical skill. It's a belief of mine that technical skill doesn't require a certain kind of person. It doesn't. Like, all of us have this ability within us.
Mm-hmm. And I think the whole American thing is also not super relevant to me, like country of origin. But we talked a lot more. We talked more about the 2 to 3 weeks, and then the second part is sort of about like the potential of parnasa, of like windfall that can come. And then the end is, I think, getting the least attention, but I think is really interesting, which is, I don't have much to compare it to because I'm not much of a career changer. And I didn't come into this being like, how can I best optimize my time versus income? Like, I went to a liberal arts college, which is like the worst possible decision you can make if you're trying to optimize time.
Literature major right here. Switched from music theater. My parents are so excited.
Urban studies major here. So then he's making this case that I guess he's saying compared to other types of training and or potentially compared to other kinds of technology where you hear like there's boot camps that's like a 3-month boot camp or something like that. And then you can accelerate faster in Salesforce. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know enough about this to say.
Okay. I'll definitely skip the middle part because I only think about nonprofit pricing and like salaries. And I think that a Salesforce admin could certainly command $80,000 anywhere in the country and should be able to, even in a nonprofit. Is it competitive to break into it in a nonprofit? I don't think so. I think nonprofits need this and are desperate. And if you're good and you want to help, then you should work in nonprofit. That's what I have to say about the middle part.
Yeah.
So the time required, like even just the time required part, if not the likely income, I would agree, I would like to state that putting time into learning technical skill, be it Salesforce or anything else, I think will have a greater ratio than many other pursuits to learn. And the reason I say it is because the jump from a very little knowledge place to even a little bit more comes with such huge benefits in my mind. Learning Salesforce could open you up to knowing any CRM if that 2 to 3 weeks training is based on understanding the core foundations of this data collection system. So I do think that putting in the time to learn technology is going to benefit you very manifold, like in a way that other skill investment might not.
Or might not benefit you monetarily.
Monetarily, yeah,
but like learning how to like make croissant dough might be really beneficial.
yeah, but also I think that's pretty specific. I don't know if learning how to make croissant dough allows you to be a pretty good bread maker in any kind of bread, whereas I think, again, if you learn the concepts and the foundations, Salesforce is one variation on these technologies, on these core concepts. So learning it, if you are given the right framing, can actually give you a wider breadth of knowledge than some other, more specific learnings.
So it sounds like we are coming not exactly down on one side, but I think that through this conversation, my perspective has moved a little bit, which I always think is really great because I value cognitive flexibility. It's a skill I work on with my therapist. And that first, when I saw this, it kind of passed me by. Then I saw all the outrage and I was persuaded that this was a bad take. But now we're talking that 2 to 3 weeks of training on database skills is kind of a good thing to do and will probably be beneficial in a lot of ways, especially if you have a genuine interest and creativity in that kind of learning. Then it'll hopefully be fulfilling and you'll learn useful things and you'll learn transferable skills. And it's probably a pretty good ROI. And Salesforce is probably a little bit more available for that kind of learning than some other kinds of relational databases because Salesforce has so invested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think similar to how I see spreadsheets as a really great ubiquitous way to understand these core concepts, I think Salesforce is actually a really great technology for that learning. A little bloated now. Maybe I would have been more forceful on that 10 years ago, but I agree with your statement. I'm also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
But one of the things that we would love to see, right, is more nuance, which obviously the point of Twitter is not nuance, but is more nuance about what kind of admin are we talking here? Because there's a lot more to the story, and I think just celebrating that's okay, and it's exciting that there are so many more things that a person can learn.
I love that framing, and I think it pushes me to maybe honor both sides, cognitive flexibility too. So what I really take away from this tweet, first and foremost, is a reiteration of a value that I think we share, that anyone who wants to can. There is no entry to barrier to entry to barrier. There's no barrier to entry based on your past experience, based on where you're coming from. The tech skills are there to learn. And there's a lot of us who want to share them and want you to learn them. I do want to honor, I mean, the years and time and late nights and sacrifice that you and I and everyone who put up a counterpoint here have put in, and should have a lot of pride in the work they do. And
I think some people saw this as insulting, but I think I see this as being like, I actually feel secure in my skills and my investment. Like, this doesn't hurt me to think. I hope that other people can learn faster than me. Like, that to me is successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, again, what gets highlighted for me is that the things I'm most proud of that I do any day in any system, like, sure, I get a little kick if I figure something new out, or I do a nice flow, or I get to, automate something. I get a nice kick because I like the puzzle. It's like a fun game for me. I love my work, but I'm most prideful or most proud of when I employ those foundations, when I have a decision and I can talk to someone, should this be a field or should this be a related record? And what's the data model underneath that? And what's the long-term thoughts around this? And the questions that you ask people to get
reports
them.
Are we going to run and all that kind of good?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why are we doing this? Why did you ask this? Why should we do this? Should we do this at all? Is there a different technology we should do this in? And that doesn't often come from 2 to 3 weeks of intensive anything. That's experience and community, though. You can get that with community. So as we have often said, no solo admins, right? I think if I were to add anything to this tweet, it would say 2 to 3 intense weeks plus a supportive community to
plus
help.
At least 2 to 3, partners, allies, accomplices who who are going to stick with you as you learn.
Yes. And for anyone out there who read this tweet or something like it, got excited, and then maybe got a little dampened by some of the reaction to it, I would say keep that excitement, actually, because there is so much exciting stuff to learn in this work, and to just pump the nonprofit side of it again, because I think many of the people here, we're coming from, I know them from some social justice, orientation, that there's a huge benefit to be had to jumping into this pool of technologists for the nonprofit world or for the social justice world. And we want you. We want you. We want you here.
And we got you.
We got you. Yeah. Yes, we got you. Come and learn. We're still learning, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much.